Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of First Person on PressProsMagazine.com, sponsored again by the Unity National Bank with offices in Troy, Piqua, and Tip City. They invite you to compare and see the difference a community bank can make in your life, the services, the people, and the convenience. Again, Unity National Bank sponsors of First Person on PressProsMagazine.com. It is week one of the high school football playoffs coming up this Friday, and we're talking playoff football with a couple of gentlemen who know it very well. Stan Wilker is a former assistant coach, athletic director at Marion Local High School. You know something about winning titles over there. And the man on my right, Tim Beckman, has won 4 state titles as the coach and athletic director at St. Henry back in the 90s. And thank you guys. I know this is a labor of love for you to talk about playoff football.
Exciting time of the year.
Yeah, best time of the year for you guys.
It doesn't get much better, and Ohio does it very well.
Let's get right to it. Stan, first of all, on Friday nights like me, you go out to high school football games. A little different perspective because I'm looking at it from a writer's perspective, but you're looking at it as a former coach. And tell us a little bit about your assessment of the state of the union of football in the area that we cover in the 9 counties around Miami, Shelby, All Glaze, Mercer, Dark, so forth.
You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference what town or stadium you go to. There's been that general perception that the quality of football is a little bit down this year. And, you know, Tim and I have talked about it at some length, and I think I would beg to differ. You know, I think, one, the bar has been raised so high in this area that it's difficult to maintain year in and year out. I know we lost, you know, a lot of schools lost some very talented kids to graduation last year, and, you know, people looked at the rosters and say, geez, you know, who's going to replace, you know, this. I don't want to mention any kids because there's a lot of kids that were lost from a lot of different schools, but who's going to, you know, replace these particular individuals? Well, you know, again, you know, we've completed 10 weeks of football, and I think some athletes have really stepped up to the plate and did a well of a job.
I don't think there's any question you've had teams that rose to the occasion, and it's a matter of experience, as you know, because it's not something you can spoon feed kids. And I know you've had an example to go out on the road this year and look at some teams statewide. Tell us a little bit about your assessment of what you've seen from Wheelersburg and places like that.
I'll tell you, there's some very good teams out there. Wheelersburg especially is, I was highly impressed with that team, that atmosphere there. You've talked about that before I got there, and it was unbelievable football team with a great receiving core, a great kicking game, good running game. They're going to be a factor. I also saw Clinton Massey play Coldwater. Clinton Massey is another team that's going to be a major factor. In Division 4, going to be a major factor there because of their size and their strength and just getting that weather starting to turn and that time here in that running game. I also had a chance to see West Jeff, and they had a great running back. And those are all teams that are going to match up well if these teams, you know, in the area we're talking about around here, and it's going to be exciting.
Once again, this week, in just 24 hours after the end of Friday night in the 10th week of the season, a lot of people are writing to the website because they know the title legacy of West Central Ohio. We mentioned St. Henry, we mentioned Marion Local, Delphos St. John's in the playoffs again this year. People want to know a little bit about are they as strong as Marion Local, as strong as they've been in the past?
I think Marion Local is a little bit different than they've been in the past. I think defensively, I think they are so sound. And I think it's a typical Tim Goodwin team. They've just gotten better as the years progressed. I'm not sure that they're quite as explosive as they've been offensively. Tim's used a lot of different athletes at running, you know, at the tailback position, but I wouldn't bet against them. I know that. You know, that said, there's some good teams in that region that could give Marion some headaches.
And Tim, tell me a little bit about a team that has maybe stood out to you that may be a surprise team over the next 2 or 3, 4 weeks.
Well, you know, the team, I look at these teams around here, and you know, a team of Mister, who's 6-4,
yeah,
and a team that I think is going to be a major factor in that Division 7. I think, and the thing there is, you're playing teams like Fort Laramie. You got that rivalry coming right away, right down the road. Friday night. You know, there's hurdles, and this time of the year you got to talk about the health of the team. There's some things, you know, teams get banged up, and I just mentioned a few minutes ago the weather plays such a big factor. sometimes as the year progresses at this point in time.
The $64,000 question through 10 weeks now, is competitive balance help football? And I look at Division 6 and Division 7. You just mentioned Division 7, and a lot of people are saying, well, you know, Minster, look at their region. Who's there to compete against a team coming out of the MAC with the kind of pedigree that they have? Your opinion now about the competitive balance and putting all these teams of St. Henry, Coldwater, and Marion all in Division 6?
I don't think that it's helped it. I don't know that it's made a difference one way or the other.
It seems like it's watered down Division 7,
Yeah,
if anything.
exactly. I don't know that it has, and you know, it's only in its first year, so maybe it's not fair to really gauge the overall impact, but to say that it's had the effect that the Ohio High School Athletic Association wanted it to have, I don't think it's
And
happened
who
yet.
knows what that effect was in the begin with.
Yeah.
What about Division 5? It hadn't done any favors for 5 either.
No, not really. I think what's happened is pushed some good teams down
Yeah.
into these lower divisions, and some other teams have gone up. And I'm gonna stand. I'm not sure. The jury's still out on it as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know if it's really, if it's going to help, hurt. I'm not sure where it's going to go.
Let's talk a little bit about some of our games of interest this particular week. I'm going to start right at the top in Division 2. And one of the games that we're going to cover Friday night is Sydney and Dayton Belmont. I absolutely know nothing about Dayton Belmont. I know they've beaten the tar out of a lot of people by big scores. Sydney has scored a lot of points. Neither one of them seem to be a great defensive team. But we're going to see Friday night, and that should be a lot of fun to watch.
That'll be fun. And I'll tell you what, just staying with Sydney for just a second, that town has to be going crazy. I mean,
Nuts, yep.
you have Sidney Lehman in there, you have Sydney for the first time, I think I read 28 years.
Yeah.
So the town has to be beside itself, and that's a great thing.
In the Lehman game again with Perry, a team they beat 49-13 a couple of weeks ago, and I know you have a lot of respect for Dick Roll.
Oh, Dick Roll, I think, is one of the classiest guys around here, number one. He's a great coach. That team's going to be prepared, and they're going to be a factor in that region. There's no doubt in my mind.
I have always been a proponent in week one of saying, well, not a proponent, I've just said there's games that maybe you question whether they should be played because you have so many number ones against number eights. Some of them have never been there before. What do you think, guys think about that?
I think, yeah, you get some mismatches.
You don't want the blowouts.
Yeah, you get some mismatches without a question, but you know, 32% of the teams get into the playoffs. You have 10 weeks to prove yourself, and you know, you can only do so much with scheduling. You're going to have the blowouts, but I think it's something we have to live with.
Tim, you also have some interesting matchups that have never played before, and I'm thinking in Division 6 this year, Bethel at Coldwater on Friday night. That will be an interesting experience for the Bethel Bees.
It'll be real interesting, and you got to wonder if Bethel's ever seen what Coldwater's going to throw at them. You know, they're going to spread that field, and they're going to go at him. Coldwater's got that playoff experience. You know, that's a tough.
Can't replace that.
No, that's, you know, when you coach, and it's so important to have that experience, and that you don't want. Sometimes I think some of these towns get wrapped up in that playoff fever that first week, and they forget they got to play a game on Friday night. I tell you, that's going to be a tough trip for Bethel come down to Coldwater.
It's kind of tough to leave the pep rally, isn't it?
It is.
I want to talk more about Division 2 because Troy, a team that we know very well, we've covered them 6 times this year, going to Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati area, and playing Anderson.
I saw Troy, and you know, like we didn't know a lot about a couple of the other teams further south. Don't know a great deal about Anderson, but I saw the Troy-Tip City match. Tip City dominated them in the second half. Troy is so well coached, and so is Tip City for that matter, but Troy has 2 very fine running backs. And they came out there and just, it was a tale of 2 halves, if I may.
We talk all the time, too, about strength of schedule, and you look at who Troy's beaten with Piqua and Sydney and Butler and teams like that, and you look at Anderson's schedule with some teams like Deer Park and Hughes and people like that. That matters, doesn't it?
There's no doubt that matters, and Coach Burbacher is such a great coach, and that staff does a great job, and those kids are going to be ready to play football. That town's hungry.
Here's one right here in the midst of where you guys live, and that's Recovery at Marion the other night, on Friday night. They know each other well, the defending state champion. Tell me a little bit of what you expect there.
Brent Niekamp, first off, is just this.
Great coach.
Great coach, great guy. 4 straight years. You talk to some Fort Recovery people, they say 10 years ago, if you would ever said, we're going to have 4 consecutive years in the playoffs, they probably would have carted you away. But Brent,
Well, 10 years ago, they were talking about giving up football altogether.
and they've done a great job. You know, they have the kid that can be a difference maker. Now, like in most small schools, he has to play both ways, and you know, you get late in the third quarter into the fourth quarter, that becomes a factor. But Tim and I were having a discussion about him. Who would we compare him to? Tim rightly compared him to Doug Speck. And I was thinking Weber, not from Zach Weber from St. John's. I think Weber a little bit quicker, you know, with his first step and so forth. But Holman, he gets so many yards after the carry.
420
Tim's concerned.
420 yards against your old team last Friday
Well,
night.
he runs with such great balance, and the yards after contact are unbelievable. There's times during the night I thought he was down 3 or 4 times. All of a sudden he pops out and he's gone. So
Let's talk about this game too, because it's the beautiful backyard rivalry. They opened the season with Minster winning 20-0 over Witt Parks and Fort Loramie. Now they meet in the first week of the second season. I imagine it's going to be a little bit different, but I bet, wow, for atmosphere and just desire to win, that's a great matchup.
well, there's no doubt. And Witt does a great job. They'll be ready for Minster, but also Minster's going to be ready for Fort Loramie. And I said that game it's going to be an interesting football game and so forth, and you know, we'll see who comes out on top on that one.
And the other thing I go back to is the strength of schedule, because this is the first year that Loramie's played in the Cross County Conference. A little bit different when you're playing Mrs. Sinnowall and when you're playing Marion Local.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, Minster at 6-4, you know, and they came on late in the year, had a big win in last week against Anna, and I think they're primed and ready for the playoffs.
I would agree. I was lucky, you know, we covered Press Pros. We covered Minster and Fort Loramie in week 1. Great crowd, you know, the weather was super, and the Hilsman kid he was the difference
He's
maker.
an
He was the
impactful
X
player.
factor.
Yes.
On both sides of the ball.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leader
He
on
sure
both
is.
sides of the ball.
Well, Loramie on 2 separate occasions had the ball inside the 5, and he stuffed them both times. He's a difference maker.
Let's conclude with this. How good is the Anna Rockets? Are the Anna Rockets?
Anna Rockets to me are scary. I think they could advance. They could go a long way. It just depends to see who shows up for Anna. Potentially, as I said, they're a scary football
Got
team.
Middletown Madison this Friday night.
Middletown Madison, which I don't know a whole lot about. Sounds like they're a new team in the playoffs too. They haven't been around for a while as far as that goes. You know, Travis Meyer, quarterback, there's a wild card. That kid, I've talked about a kid, a lot of guts, what he's done for them. 2 great running backs for Anna. You know, I wouldn't count Anna out by any means.
No, when you have guys like Hules Camp and Aiden Inslee, who I thought was the most impactful running back in the league preseason, and then Will Holman shows up. So
Well.
Anna's got their attributes.
Yes, they do. And, you know, Nick Marino, he's done a whale of a job there in 2 years. I saw him again, Press Pros covered the Versailles-Anna game. That night it was 52-20, and I walked away from there saying, Anna may not lose in the MAC.
Yeah.
They were a machine that night.
Week 2 starts this Friday night. We've been privileged to sit here and talk about it again with Stan Wilker and Tim Beckman, and that wraps up this edition of First Person, again sponsored by the Unity National Bank with offices in Troy, Piqua, and Tip City. Compare them. You'll like the difference a community bank can make in your life. Once again, for the guys and our sponsors and everybody that's made this a special football season in 2017, we appreciate your support of what we do on PressProsMagazine.com, and we'll see you again next week with another edition of First Person.